Alright, what's going on, you guys? Welcome to Real Madrid Hub again. I'm your host, Dr. Jota, and I wanted to make this video for a reason which is, in my opinion, really important. And now that we are going to start with the new season, the new preseason, and it's the kind of revolutionary change that we might see, and not only in the defense, in the back line of Real Madrid, but also in the whole squad. And it's because we will have, if finally Real Madrid is able to sign the Jules Koundé, we might see to the top 3 defenders in the back line of Real Madrid. And of course, the election between these 3 players might be so difficult for Carlo Ancelotti that he might change his mind and say, hey, why don't we use the 3 players at a time? To form the whole squad with a 3 players back line, which is, in my opinion, a possibility that can happen. You know what I'm saying? Of course, first thing I want to talk to you all is about those comments, which I really appreciated. A couple of you dropped a couple of comments yesterday in the video about the Jules Koundé, saying and reminding me that Carlo Ancelotti used the 3 players back line system in Everton in the last season, which is true, and I appreciate your comments because it's something that is always good to remind. But let me tell you something else. It's not the first time. It was not the first time in Everton when Carlo Ancelotti used this kind of system. If you throw back to the first time he became the coach of Juventus de Turin and also in Milan, he used that system not every single game, right? But he used it like 8 or 9 times in the season. So it was not the first time. It is not a system he doesn't really know or something like that. I know that he's a little bit familiarized with that system, and the point of this whole video is to share with you all that we might see that change and we might be back to that formation of 3 players back line. And the reason for that is what I told you in the beginning of the video. If you have players who can be all the time in the lineup of Real Madrid, for example, we're talking about Militao, we're talking about Jules Koundé, if we finally signs to the French player, and if we also have the David Alaba, who is already signed for the next season for Real Madrid, how are you going to pick between these 3 players? That would be so difficult. And if that decision is so difficult to be made, then Ancelotti might change his mind and say, hey, if I've been using the David Alaba in Bayern de Munich as a left back, if we have to Jules Koundé in the center of the defense line, and we also have the rising star Militao in Real Madrid, who is also super young, why don't we use 3 players instead 4? You know, so that would be 3 center backs in the back line and then 2 full backs. In my opinion, these full backs would be Ferland Mendy on one side, and then on the other side, in the right side, we should use, whether Carvajal or even Alvaro Odriozola. Problem here is, or even Lucas Vázquez, but the problem here is, in my opinion, Dani Carvajal is not the kind of profile for a fullback position. Dani Carvajal is a very rocky guy, very strong guy, but in my opinion, he plays much better as a right back than a fullback, you know, because in the last meters, in the last run, in my opinion, Alvaro Odriozola is way ahead of him, and of course, Lucas Vázquez is even way ahead of Alvaro Odriozola. So, in my opinion, that system, if we are willing to use that system with 4 or even 3 center backs and then 2 full backs, then we should have another, a little bit better wing back if we are not counting on Alvaro Odriozola. For example, Achraf, I told you in the first video, Achraf Hakimi is, to me, one of the biggest missing opportunities that we will have, because if you have to use a player as a wingback and you don't have another one in the right side, then Achraf Hakimi would fit perfectly in this position. So in my opinion, he would have made a great job in Real Madrid, but the problem is with the money. PSG will pay about 60 million for Achraf Hakimi. So even with the right to equalize and match that offer and have the priority to sign him back, that would be a lot of money for Real Madrid. So I certainly understand why Real Madrid didn't put such amount of money for Achraf Hakimi, even having the right to match the offer and the priority for signing back. You know what I'm saying? But aside of that, and forgetting that stuff and talking just about the center back line, in my opinion, it's gotta be great. This is a possibility that Carlo Ancelotti can use like Zidane did last season, but it was, it was the same reason why Carlo Ancelotti did in Everton. It was the circumstances. It was injured players, players that were not in really good shape, so they have to end it using this system for, 3 players backline just because there was no other way around. You know what I'm saying? So if you have the possibility to line up 4 players in the defense line, in my opinion, Carlo Ancelotti will go ahead and try that way. But if it's so difficult to pick among these players, among Militao, who is a rising star, Jules Koundé, which is international player with France, and David Alaba, which is completely, settled down on the squad and soccer spectrum, 28 years old, a lot of experience. He's been doing a great job in the European Championship. He will, of course, not be on the bench. Then the best way for us, the best way for everybody, the best way for the players, even for the squad and even for the coach, is to put him at a time, to put him in the lineup and see how these guys playing together work. You know what I'm saying? In my opinion, it's gotta be great because you are mixing the experience of David Alaba, and also along with David Alaba, you will have a younger players like Militao, and on the other hand too, Jules Koundé, who in my opinion can do a great job in Real Madrid. The other thing is we have to renew completely the backline if you consider that Ramos is out and Rafa Varane might be out in a few days. You know what I'm saying? So that way, I think that this revolutionary change that Carlo Ancelotti might implement in Real Madrid could be great, but it's not going to influence only to the defense line but also to the whole squad, because if you are only playing with 3 players back line, then you have to have 2 fullbacks, and then in the middle you might use as well to Casemiro, and of course, for example, let's say Fede Valverde, Martin Odegaard. You also have to Luka Modric and Toni Kroos, who are obviously options for Real Madrid still. They are older, but in my opinion, the experience that these guys have and can provide to Real Madrid is completely undisputable. And although I think that the youngsters should have more minutes this season, I'm not sure if Ancelotti will go ahead and try to give him all the time that they really need to develop their careers in Real Madrid, right? But aside of that, then if you have that kind of midfield, then you can go ahead to the forwarders and say, okay, if you are using 3 players here, 2 in the sides and then 3 in the middle, you can use a couple players, that's it. And assuming that Kylian Mbappe is not signing for Real Madrid, let's pretend that Kylian Mbappe stays in PSG, and then you can only have room for a couple forwarders, which is, in my opinion, the best way for us, because there's no point in using 3 forwarders when you have 2 of them in the sides, like for example Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo, or even Asensio and Hazard, who in my opinion are not really ready for Real Madrid. They are not top players still, you know what I'm saying? So considering that, we will be okay, we should be good to go with only 2 forwarders. For example, say Benzema and maybe Gareth Bale, Benzema and Vinicius Jr., and that'll be enough. Good enough for us. So waiting for the latest news, waiting to see how Carlo Ancelotti will form the whole squad. In my opinion, this might be a new challenge, a new change for Real Madrid in the formation, in the tactical formation, which in my opinion might be okay for us, and we could see another different, another different squad, another different formation lineup, starting 11 or whatever you're going to call it, that potentially can have a very positive influence over the rest of the squad. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see what happens. We'll see if Carlo Ancelotti, and now that David Alaba has been eliminated from the European Championship, if they have a conversation about that, about the back line, and see of course what happens with Jules Koundé, because in my opinion is very close to sign for Real Madrid, but nobody knows still. And we'll see of course about the conversation that Carlo Ancelotti will have also with Eder Militao when he comes back from Brazil. And yeah, it can happen. So now let me know your thoughts about that. Just drop the comments in the section below. And of course, see you in the next video.